Welcome back, fellow traveler. I want to talk to you today about why people get bumped from their seat in favor for airline employees getting those seats. Now, in the past, there's been a bit of an outrage. In the recent past, there was that United flight a few months ago. There have been other instances as well where somebody was deboarded or deplaned, and that seat was given to an employee to fly. And people on the social media and on forums and all that took to voicing their displeasure with those types of practices. They think it's unfair, and they don't see why an employee should be given a seat when there's a paying passenger who should have that seat. And while on the surface I would agree that it looks pretty bad, and if I didn't have the experience that I had in airlines, I'd probably wondering what the heck is going on and why that would even be allowed to fly. Pardon the pun, it was not intentional. But the main reason that this happens is the employees flying are usually under one of three categories. It's usually maintenance, flight attendant, or a pilot that would be able to bump somebody going to a certain destination. I couldn't even consciously fathom a scenario where somebody, like let's say a passenger agent on a vacation, would get a seat over a paying passenger. It just doesn't happen. It's just not A, good business practices, or B, ethically okay. And there's definitely a precedence that airlines wouldn't want to set in that sense, because definitely anybody that gets bumped off a flight, it looks bad just on those optics alone, let alone the fact is the seat being given to an employee. So airlines want to mitigate that as much as possible, and that's why employees are given standby passes and not confirmed passes, because you're an employee, and if you are traveling, you are well aware that the needs of the company and the operation come before the needs of the employee traveling for leisure. Now, to go back to those three instances, if we look at why a mechanic, a flight attendant, or a pilot would need to go somewhere and in such haste that they would have to bump somebody off, it's obviously due to operation constraints or moving the operation forward. So making sure that a flight takes off, or that there's enough crew members on that flight for it to take off, or if there's some sort of emergency where an aircraft needed to be repaired, and if it was something where they actually needed a certain particular mechanic with a certain set of skills to go to this location because it's not safe enough to bring the aircraft back and then repair it, would be another reason. So looking at it and taking the individual that was pulled off the flight out of the equation. But the way it works is it's usually the lowest fare and somebody who didn't reserve a seat. There's this whole chart that airlines build to go through, and they program into an algorithm so that the computer spits out the passengers. So they don't really factor in personal stories. They factor in how much revenue the airline would be losing or stand to give back to the person that was bumped, and a lot of other different factors. But taking that out of consideration, so taking the fact of it's one particular person, why does it happen? You look at the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. So yes, I did quote, I believe it is Star Trek, but whatever. You look at it, and it's unfortunate that one person couldn't fly, but imagine a whole plane full of those people not being able to fly. So in the case of the mechanic, the plane just not being able to properly take off under good conscience that the flight itself or the plane itself is safe. So you'd have 100 some odd people missing their flight, or just waiting for another aircraft to be towed in, or waiting for that person to get an open seat on a plane. It might be a few days. So there's that cost to the airline for them to be able to say, hey, we're going to put you guys up in a hotel. Everything will be okay in a few days once our mechanic gets here, and then you can take off. That wouldn't fly. You and I both know that would not fly. There would be riots upon riots upon riots of people just wanting to get home or going to their destination. Then you look at the other reason. Why would there need to be a flight attendant? Well, there are regulations for airspace where there has to be a certain number of employees or crew members to passengers, so it's a ratio. And if, let's say, a flight attendant calls in sick, or she gets hurt during the flight, or some other reason that would mean that the flight attendants that were scheduled to work can't work. So you have to replace that flight attendant. The airlines generally don't have reserves of flight attendants waiting around in various locations around the globe, so they have to then fly somebody out. Or, I don't know if airlines still do this, but I do know that in the past I heard of them cutting whole swatches of passengers and leaving them behind. I doubt that's practice anymore. I haven't heard of that in quite some time. But you look at that, so let's say it's 50 people that can't fly because one flight attendant got hurt, there was turbulence, she banged her head, whatever, or maybe she just had something bad and she can't fly, like she's got food poisoning, she's throwing up. There are certain things that you can and can't fly with. Generally, flight attendants are instructed to, because a lot hinges on their safety, and by extension the safety of the rest of the airplane. Flight attendants are seen by the public as, waitresses, glorified waitresses, which is completely wrong. That's kind of like that's not the main goal of being a flight attendant. It's making sure that people are safe. They go through rigorous amounts of training, and they have that training continuously shoved down their throats, making sure they know in and out, backwards and forwards, and always keeping up to date on the newest regulations. So they are first and foremost people that are there for your safety. So if they can't help passengers be safe or to follow airline regulations and FAA regulations or regulations that are imposed by international travel bodies, then they need to find somebody who can. So that would be another situation. Now, obviously, pilot, if you don't have a pilot, he's gotten the same thing, he's gotten sick, he hurt himself or whatever, you need another pilot. So to save face, and it boils down to, if we need 300 people to take off, well, we're going to sacrifice that 1 or 2 people that have to be bumped off the plane in order for us to be able to get the 300 people home at a reasonable time. Furthermore, airplanes are almost perpetually always in motion. The reason for that is that airlines need to maximize revenue. They need to make sure they stay afloat, and having hangars full of aircrafts just sitting waiting for another aircraft to break is not good business. So they need their aircraft to go from one place to another place. So we talked about, the 100 or 300 people that might be affected by a direct cancellation. Well, that also snowballs down the line. If an airline really starts getting into trouble and they have to then delay other passengers on different flights going to different parts of the world, it really makes things for a losing proposition for not just the airline's business flow or the cash flow, but for passengers' trust in that airline that they can deliver an on-time performance. So that's something that they always need to consider, or just not even on-time performance, just performance in general. Can I ensure that there's going to be an aircraft waiting with the proper amount of crew? Now, obviously, you're going to still piss off that one passenger that gets bumped, but I think you can see there why airlines will sometimes bump a paying passenger for an employee. It's not because this guy's got to go to the Bahamas or something. He's needed somewhere else so that other passengers can get on their way with travel. So there you have it. I would like to know if you were ever bumped off an airplane. It doesn't have to be for an employee. What was your experience like? Did that really, it obviously upset you. Nobody likes being bumped off, but have you sworn off that airline? If so, what airline? Love to hear it. Let me know in the comments. In the meantime, if you'd like to check out some of my other videos, you can do that right over there. And if you'd like to subscribe, you can do that right there. It really helps the channel out. And all that lets you know when we upload new content. I'd like to thank you for making me a part of your day. And until next time,